I'm Gene Grant here in the studios of New Mexico PBS with our Line Opinion panelists. Now, before we start taping this week, we wanted to get our panelists' take on a story that's been in the headlines coast to coast. Republican Janice Arnold Jones is running for the 1st Congressional District, as you know. Her opponent, Democrat Deb Haaland, is a member of the Laguna Pueblo. Now, Ms. Arnold Jones made a statement on a Fox News interview that got a lot of attention. And Laura, you've seen the interview. It seems like Ms. Arnold Jones was questioning whether Deb Haaland is really quote-unquote native enough. How did that strike you when you saw that interview?
It was, well, for one, having been on the show a lot with Janice Arnold Jones and having observed her and her comments during the legislative session for many years when she was a state rep, this struck me as odd because I don't perceive her as somebody who has racial, sort of racist tendencies or animus in any way. So initially it struck me as definitely a poor choice of words, but I think she made it worse by some of the follow-up commentary. I think that what she was trying to bring attention to was that she had somehow not been raised sort of on the Pueblo and had been a military brat, as she said. But I think that it's a very slippery slope and very dangerous for any candidate to question a person's identity and their background. And I think that this was just a very unfortunate position for her to take, and to continue to sort of harp on that, it was not useful for her at all.
Tom, your sense of it when you watched that interview?
It is very unfortunate. You know, I don't think that captures who Janice Arnold Jones is as a person. Unfortunately, I think that perhaps it was fell into a bit of a formula for some campaign rhetoric. You know, it had a lot of overtones of the current president's criticism of Elizabeth Warren, and it was almost as if she was trying to create that that coalition with the current president to say, hey, look, here is another situation, and it was really bad because it plays to the extremes in a political environment where I think a lot of us are tired of the extremes, but unfortunately, that formula tends to work to get out the activists to remind them to vote. So it's all very unfortunate.
Yeah.
What a little bit of purposefulness there? Did you have the sense of what Tom was saying there, that she could have easily avoided the whole subject, easily. It was something she walked right into and kind of continued on her own.
Yes, and she could have remedied the situation by apologizing for it afterwards, but I agree with Tom. Instead, she did a very Trump-like thing afterwards and doubled down, refusing to see how anyone could see this as anything but the facts. And it's really unfortunate in New Mexico, in our multicultural state, and I just think she should have known better, unless it was purposeful, as Tom was saying, and I hope it wasn't, because on the very same day that she, urban Native Americans have their own problems, and there's been a lot of literature lately about urban Native Americans and their own particular problems. But on the very same day that she doubled down and said she didn't see how anyone could see that she was a racist, she also wrote an op-ed for the Albuquerque Journal about how we need to restore civility to the political discourse, and her actions there did not meet, I think, her aspirations.
Serge, your sense of it as well. It's interesting that the military brat thing was odd. One can move from base to base, I'm sure. But that doesn't mean you leave behind who you are, and how you came up and your heritage. These things don't, stop at the border. So.
Yeah, I saw this less as a political question and how this might play out in any sort of campaign. It's just generally messed up to have her trying to arrogate to herself the power, the authority to decide who is who and who, whether someone is X enough or Y enough, or gets to, that she gets to decide what their identity is. And it's not limited to political conversations. It's certainly part of the larger
Any sense from anybody if this has any impact on the race itself, on the CD1 race? Does anyone sense anything that might be problematic for Janice on this situation?
Oh, I think so. I mean, I think there's a lot of people who might not have otherwise cared necessarily about this, you know, and it might be on both sides. I mean, I think it is unfortunate that there's an element of the of extreme, sort of extremist thinking that may have perhaps people who view Fox News who would be inclined to come out and vote because of some of what she said. But I think on the other side, there's going to be a lot of people who are very upset by her comments, think that that's not the right sort of representative that we want from New Mexico, from this congressional district, given the long history of who's been representing this district and the people who make up the constituents of this district. I think there's a lot of people who will be very unhappy with the idea that she may get into that position and reflect that from New Mexico, that point of view from New Mexico. And so I think that it's going to engage a lot more people in voting, as well as, I think, a lot more contributions to Deb Haaland.
Right. You can see the ads coming up quickly. You know what I mean? It won't take long to leverage something like that. So we'll see how it plays. Thank you all.